Hello and welcome to Dice Encounters, and today I am joined by some of my players to discuss player tips. And the tips we are discussing today is looking for trouble. Looking for trouble on purpose. And this is the idea that in games that you don't try to, keep your character alive and safe and play as you would in real life and make sure that you don't come into harm's way, but you actually go out and you look for trouble and you look for harm and you look for exciting things to happen. Because that's what people do in exciting films and shows and things that we like watching. So why not do it here? Or should we do it here? That's the question we have to ask.
One of many questions we have to ask, I imagine.
Well, it is. So, and I thought this is quite interesting as well to have you guys on, because I feel like this is something that we haven't done very much of, but I think in our upcoming campaign, Blades in the Dark, it's very much encouraged through the mechanics. So it may be a shift in style of play. But what do you think about the whole thing? Like you've read the blog, you've read the article that I wrote.
Literature. Oh, you wrote it. Oh wow, awkward. I was about to just criticize the style, the language. I'm glad you caught me there because that was going to get awkward.
Yeah.
No, I guess from my side, I think it definitely sits adjacent to how I would play, in that I think it's just it's I think we all play a lot of video games where you kind of your character's safe, really. You're going to die and it's about retrying it. It becomes quite a different experience when you've spent time creating, investing in a character, and you want to get immersed as well. So you want to believe something bad can happen to them, and therefore you go, oh crap, something bad can happen to them, and then it gets it can be quite scary. You don't want to be quote unquote out of the game. You want to keep working with that character you've done. So I think even though I'm someone in a game like this that tends to try and have fun and poke around the edges and do silly things, I probably am very conscious of, oh god, please don't let this character die. That would really suck. So I get very worried about it. Like you get kind of, when you're in a combat and suddenly you're like, yep, you've taken 17 wounds. Like your heart starts racing a bit, and you can't help but feel a bit protective. So it's a hard thing to overcome, I reckon. So it's tricky.
Yeah, and I think in Blades, I think it's very hard to just die instantly or die like in, I guess, like in a normal game or the games that we have played, where you see very clearly your hit points have run out, you're mortally wounded, you're on the floor, and then you can probably tell like whether your friends can revive you or not quite easily. But I think in Blades, there's a lot of opportunities for you to like push yourself or even do even more desperate actions to try and get yourself out of those situations. So there is there's like a bit more of a safety barrier, I think. Like,
yeah, but they almost shouldn't have to be, right? Because there probably are more than we think in the other games we played, be it systems like Wang or Pathfinder or regular D&D. Like more than often than not, every time I think we're about to die, it's always, but actually you've got another try, and the death die, and the roll dies. And I think it's just maybe the difference currently going into Blaze in the Dark is that the book and what we've done is very much like, do the most fun thing, just do that. And maybe it's because our characters are all going to be kind of, they're supposed to be all bad people, villainous in a little way anyway. It might make it easier, but I'm already incentivized more so than other characters. But I don't think we don't necessarily go in with a discussion of like, hey guys, try and see what happens. And I think we all just defaultly stick to protect ourselves. So I think it definitely helps go into plays with the mindset of do the fun thing. These guys are kind of dicks anyway, so if they get injured, that's kind of righteous. So it's going to make a difference, I think.
I think that's just it in it, really, because in Age of Sigmar, for example, you're playing the Soulbound, right? You're playing the heroes of the realm, where your duty is to save the world, right? Whereas here, we're literally just scoundrels, petty criminals at the moment, and that kind of gives it that, bit more of a push, bit more incentive to play like that.
That's an interesting point, because my first point of this discussion is talking about play to protect, which is kind of the opposite, which is actually what you guys are both talking about. And it's quite interesting hearing the different reasons why you would. It's quite interesting hearing Lawrie's idea that because his job is so important as a soulbound, that his survival is actually really important for the for the world. What are you going to
Well,
say,
I
Des?
mean, building on what Lawrie said, or actually like a counter argument to that, because yeah, I agree. I think obviously, like, for example, in Soulbound, like having certain characters, you kind of you're meant to be a little more powerful than the normal people because that's literally what we are. You're a soulbound. You're a special person decided out, chosen by Sigmar and everything. But at the same time, and this is how I like to build characters. I mean, they are, you know, quote unquote real, again, quote unquote people. So they have like their downfalls, they have their vices, their virtues, and for me, it's more interesting to find a way to build a character given those characteristics, and then having him act in a way that would support the mission and your team, but also like trying to make him not seem like a blank slate. So this is pretty much why my characters are notorious for dying, because I again, and this might be a mistake. Like obviously, I'm not perfect, but the way I try to go about it is that, yeah, you have your mission, but if, for example, you're playing a prideful character and there's a character who's about to, I don't know, run away or make you look bad in some way, then you wouldn't want that. So maybe you would follow that character even if at the back of your mind you think that maybe he's leading you into a trap, but your pride wouldn't let you stay back. So we're still playing towards the goal of helping helping whoever we're assigned to help and completing the mission. But at the same time, those little characteristics like sort of like get thrown in to change the micro decisions that are taken during the game. At least for me.
It's a bit narrative as well, isn't it? Because we're conditioned through most stories and literature to be, or any story mediums, films, TV. The character dies. That's kind of, they lose, right? Unless it's right at the end of the series, it's heroic death. Like dying in Act 1, it's a bit of a womp womp kind of moment. And you kind of don't want that, especially when you spend time building the character, coming up with him. You've probably done 3 or 4 hours of sessions already. So to have them die and then have to restart, it does feels very contrary to what we've kind of grown up with in terms of storytelling. But also, if you're in personal, maybe it's also a little bit not lazy, but just feel like I just don't want to build another character. Like there's a little bit of that, a little bit, both from a practical sense of that was time investment, and just that it's kind of like losing progress in a video game. You've done that when you've been playing, and you're reloading your save file and save for an hour.
You get attached.
You get attached, of course you do. So it's a really weird thing to square away, because you want to be immersed in these characters, but you have to always kind of treat them disposably. But I guess you almost kind of don't. What we're saying here is that actually we probably worry too much, and actually it's actually, well, apart from Daryl, it's actually quite hard to die. He seems to always find a way, but
it reminds me of that. Remember when I said from the Blades in the Dark book, the author says to play like you're driving a stolen car. And do you remember I told you guys that, and then you all had different interpretations of what that actually meant.
Yeah, I can't remember all of our different ones were, but they were. It was hilarious. Everyone took it very differently.
I think somebody was like,
that was very interesting to see.
I don't know if it's an American thing, but I think the idea is like it's a joyride to hell kind of thing. Like you're going to hell, but you may as well enjoy it while you're doing it. But I think, Mikey, you were like, I would drive very cautiously actually to avoid notice.
I think I literally flashed like GTA, a mission of getting the car back to the garage without scratching the paint, stopping at every traffic light. Yeah.
It's playing with enough risk to have that bit more, just like a random encounter, or that bit more danger, right? To make it a bit more fun.
Yeah. It certainly brings energy when players are wounded and bleeding out, and you're like you have to pull the safety. I guess the thing that's really interesting, I was thinking about actually, was like you kind of need a safety net, and it comes back to a lot of the player DM relationship a little bit, because I assume as a DM you kind of have to sometimes pump the brakes a little bit, maybe make a little tweaky, like, oh my god, because there've been times where we've been maybe 3 people down, and it feels a bit not convenient, but like we managed to make it through. And I imagine you've got to at least maybe like, I don't know, maybe just subtly remove one orc from the battlefield, just push the favour a little on the favour. And I think that's the kind of unsaid trust we have a little bit, that yeah, stuff can go wrong. But you're not going to actually go, cool. Well, that's it. Everything erupted. You're dead. See you next session. Like it's that's the main thing. Is the trust as well is really important. And
yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Just on that, in Blades in the Dark, it does seem to have that system built in where you can, if someone's struggling with a role or struggling with their action, then the rest of the party can quite easily help them with that, right?
Yeah.
And there's like the flashback mechanics that obviously help
there's
that as well.
like flashbacks, assists, devil's bargains. You can push yourself. Lots and lots of ways to kind of give you sort of tilt the scales, as it
Kind
were.
of outs in a situation where there would be no other opportunity, kind of thing.
Yeah. But yeah, I think when I think about what you said about Mikey about having to pump the brakes a little bit, I don't think that's happened more than a couple of times actually, and it was mostly in like Wang, because that just seemed to be a lot more lethal. Like when actually Dezek died in that scene, I had more enemies waiting off screen to come in, but that's normally just like a balanced thing. Like if it's too easy, I'll put a bit more in. If it's too hard, I'll pull a few back. So I don't want it to be boring. I don't want
to impossible.
Yeah.
Seems like you were adamant on killing him then.
I feel like sometimes I think with your characters, Daryl, the problem is they normally, the ones who die because they are out and they can't be reached by anyone else. I think Milo's like saved Alex's characters quite a few times because they've just been there and you can go and patch them up and all this.
Definitely.
I remember on the Cog Fort, and you charged through into the Waterlock engineers and just got blasted without anyone being able to help, because it was only me and you on the Cog Fort at the time.
Yeah, no, I know, and it is. I mean, I wouldn't say like it's deliberate. Like I don't want to get my characters killed, but like I said earlier. But it's not really that's like a point of like that's what the character would have done, because that's even as the article itself states, it's like a bit of a lazy excuse. Like I did this because that's what the character would have done. It's like it's a mixture of that's what the character would have done, but also keeping in mind that you don't want to ruin the campaign for anyone else.
Yeah.
Right. So for example, in I think all instances when my character died, it was like a reckless action, but it was a thought out reckless action because I knew that ultimately the game would be able to go on, so that would be meaningful in its own way. Like I actually took down some notes given the characters themselves because I knew we would end up talking about it. But for example, because I definitely saw this coming, but like Kazal, which was in our last campaign, he was a bit of a show-off character, and he was also like plagued with the memories of watching his own brother die due to his inaction and everything. So when we got to the fort and we were all surrounded, it was like, okay, like this is his time to like try to make up for it. And at the same time, I knew that if I managed to damage enough people and like get them inactive or like protect others, then the story would be able to go on. And that's exactly what he did. I didn't really think that people would go and hide in huts, Mikey.
Mighty soulbound.
When that happened.
Well,
but
one moment to defend. Obviously, Charles Daryl, he's got a good list of things there. I was thinking that actually, for me, I think I'm probably most guilty of it because I think the need to play to protect actually defines a lot of my characters. I've not yet played a character who is a jump in the melee because I know that can happen. It actually informs my character creation. I usually have long range archers or people who are nimble and can dodge. Or in this instance, it was a character who actually had no armor at all, so I kind of had to. I was very squishy, and I was a buff character, so I did inevitably literally hide behind people. So that was what my character would have done.
The anger towards this is all fabricated. It's not real anger.
No, I know. But it's weird to think about it, and you're right. That character had to hide, but also it's because I do play to protect quite a lot. I literally choose characters who aren't going to be in danger. So, whereas you have, as you're about to keep on listing, other characters that kind of have been danger ready.
Yeah. Well, what about like just because I know we're talking about combat, which is obviously I think it's different kettle of fish. But in terms of like free play, when you're kind of in between encounters and stuff, and because one of the things I wrote about was in this game called Tech Noir, which is kind of like a noir game set in the sort of sci-fi setting, and it talks about going out and shaking the world until something falls out. Like a noir detective would put on their trench coat and their hat, and they'd go out into the rainy streets and they'd go and talk to their contacts, and they'd go and burst open, some doors, and get beat up, and they'll solve the case. Like, what do you think about playing? Does that sound appealing? Playing that type, and then if you get beat up, you get beat up. But
yeah, no, that it definitely sounds very appealing to me as a kind of person who, I mean, I do enjoy like shaking things up. But again, it has to make sense. Like, you wouldn't want to shake things up just for shaking things up. Like, for example, with our last campaign, like, I think it was the last session or the session before last, when we were fighting. Not fighting. Oh my God, what's the name of the large
Chardu.
Chardu? Yes, thank you. I completely forgot the name already. Yeah, I mean, if I had to go like, this is what the character would have done, and like just shake things up for like shaking things up sake, then I would have attacked when he was at the water treatment facility. But that wouldn't have made sense given the direction that the team wanted to go in. So yeah, shaking things up is fun, and adhering to what your character is built on is fun, at least for me. But it has to make sense. You don't want to ruin it for everyone else just so that you can leave the session with a smile on your face because you did what you wanted to do. It's a team game after all, right?
Yeah, and
that
that
was
is
the thing I was thinking of, was the was the teamwork aspect, and trying to fit within your own story and have the fun, but make sure you're on putting things off the track for everyone else is something I'm more conscious of. Sorry, Lawrie, you were going to say something. Sorry.
Yeah, so just using games as a reference. Obviously, like your traditional RPG would be like an action adventure game or something. Whereas this kind of new style is like more like a roguelike, right? You're saying kind of you go out, you maybe take you fail, but you fail well, right? You get a bit of information and you get a bit of progress even though you fail, so you can kind of build on that over time.
Yep.
And it's kind of like you can keep failing, but it's building up to a win, or you're going to win eventually.
Exactly.
And that can be quite satisfying in its own regard because it's a longer journey, but you're breaking through, right? And it's you're picking up bits here and there to piece together the bigger picture.
Oh, sure.
And that is why, to continue the Blades of the Dark plugging, that is why the most common result on the dice is success with a consequence. You do the thing you wanted to do, but something else goes wrong, and then you sort of cascade into this situation where there's so many things running out of control that you're trying to balance, and you're having to spend all of your resources to keep things on top of all these things.
It's gonna be nice knowing there's, like you say, just a bumpers a little bit on the edge for it, because it can be risky. I think of like in Wang had a really good system where I can't remember, was it just us getting injured or just taking the corruption, whatever it was, but the more wounds you would take, you'd just get parts that you would change, and so there'd be
that's corruption.
Consequences to being really, really wounded beyond dying that would start getting really weird and fit narratively well within the game. So by the end, again, I never did because I was a big cowardy coward. But
Wang, you weren't a coward in Wang.
I would just stand back and just flame everything. There's never
fair enough.
Never engaged. You see, that's the thing. Like it's like a pattern. But a character like Alex is, by the end, he was like, ears were made out of tentacles. His
he had wings.
Yeah, that's true.
Moves, and it's just like that was kind of great though, because it was consequences. The combats went badly, and it was that was great. So, like I said, it's good to know here. There's other bits. And the other thing I was just thinking of quickly was about the team way of playing. It's which Daryl mentioned, it is tough because you kind of do want to veer off and get out there, but it's quite hard when you're all doing that as well. You kind of can't all be the hard-boiled detective. That gets a bit kind of, you all just burst in the room, all just run to the corner, and it's just a bit like, so it's at what point there's a balance between that, and at what point it feels organic. You're not just like taking it into this week I'm the pusher. It kind of has to come organically, and it can be tricky when you're actually all playing together, and it's you have to make that decision. So
I've listened to lots of different like role-playing campaigns over the years, and I think a lot of them, like sometimes I think about the characters in that and the situations in that, I think that's almost like soap opera-esque drama, like a character having like a personal sort of crisis of confidence in the middle of a mission or a heist or something, and it's like I was like, would that happen? But actually the drama of it is really good.
Yeah.
Like someone being like, I know we're about to steal this spaceship, but I need to fucking talk to you about this shit that happened last week. That's been driving me crazy, and stuff like that. And playing on that, those vices and those flaws that they have baked in.
Because that was what you were asking, was about more the free time in between. I don't think we've ever really become perilously. Oh, what would you treat wrong? As far as I'm trying to think of a time when we became perilously close to being endangered in out of combat. But Daryl, you can remember a time?
I wouldn't say in danger. Well, I wasn't talking actually about the in danger part, but like out of combat things that would like sort of like dictate what your character does and how he behaves. And this also really affected your character as well, Mikey. Was when Carrick lost his hat. Like that wasn't really an in combat thing, but it was so built in. And I don't know if you hated it, Ollie, but I genuinely loved that the way it turned out.
When you started killing civilians, you mean?
Well, that was the end part, and you know exactly why that happened. Like again, like this is the point I was trying to make earlier. Like you don't want to ruin the fun for anyone else, but that was literally like I think the last session or the session before last. So like certain risky decisions could have been taken. Like the character would have never done that. And again, it was an amalgamation of everything else that happened before. Like the psychology behind like him having the hat was his best friend because he was mentally unstable, well, with his like upbringing, and he was buried alive. Obviously, like that's the way that they achieved their status. So he wasn't really like the most their character, and having his one of his best friends taken away and then returned, and after he managed to reunite with his best friend,
which was a hat.
Yeah, he died. Yeah, I'm not talking about the hat, by the way, but he died because the hat was broken, because his armor was damaged.
Yeah.
So I mean, the guy lost his cool, but his whole character was built upon defending everyone else, and that's kind of like he tried to turn that around and redeem himself at the end by literally dying protecting the rest, and dying while dealing the final blow, which I think was the quite
self-sacrifice was good.
It's a good example. So this was one of our. It was a soulbound campaign very early on.
The first one, yeah.
Very early on, we were basically betrayed and left out at sea by a smuggler, which for Daryl resulted in him losing some precious items. But the whole team was like betrayed and left for dead. And I played a very vindictive, evil, like Night Sister type character. And so it seemed fun for me to hold this grudge whenever his character popped up, only because he was like a smarmy bastard, but it was fun to do. But actually, I actually, that was one of the things about out of combat. I was a lot looking for trouble a lot with that guy.
Yeah.
I was trying to kill him. And actually, I was reeled back in quite a lot, to be fair, by the players.
Yeah.
Quite a lot. I think I eventually got him in the vast. I think you let me have him in the last like 5 minutes.
In the epilogue, yeah.
Basically. I was looking for trouble. I wasn't actually too fussed about the consequences. That was driven by the character being. She was a murderous, bloodthirsty character, so that definitely helped. But I did get reeled in on that, so that's kind of interesting. That's the hard example of that character's quite important actually. So can't really just kill him.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes, that's tough, right?
And that's the problem with the published adventures as well. Like I had to give him plot armor just so he could do the things that he was supposed to do. Like he's the only guy who has a flying ship, so he's the only guy who can actually save you when you're on top of that tower and stuff. But I think that's an interesting point to move on to, is not ruining the fun for other people by doing this, because I feel like that's the first thing that people would think when they talk about this. They just think of people the chaotic neutral rogues who steal from other players, or they sort of kill people in the middle of social encounters and whatever, or the shopkeep. And I think the only way to combat that is to just have it out of character conversation about it, and just saying, I want to do this cool thing with my character. And I think nobody would say no. Maybe someone like Milo would be like, oh, could you maybe just not do it, or like tone it down a little bit. But I think ultimately we'd all be like, that's really cool, or like that, that's a cool ending for your character. Like Alex and I discussed beforehand the ending for Edu, and I was like, I think it'd be cool if he turned into a chaos spawn, and then the party had to kill you, and he was like, yeah, that's really good.
That was very good.
that'd be really fun for everyone to like be a part of.
It was in a weird way, but that was that's the character I was talking about. That by the end of it was basically already half away, and I think we just it worked out. It felt very natural. And then he took one last huge hit, and it just the story was that he then just mutated fully and had to be put down. Again, that was right at the end, so that felt really good because, like I'm saying, it's absolutely fine dying right at the end. I think our first D&D campaign. Not our first. Oh god, I get so confused now. It would have been Avernus, right? Yes, with the when my character kind of took on the spirit of the underworld god, and I was and stranded and got lost for good down there, and I was a bit disappointed when it was like, oh no, actually you feel off the hook and you're totally safe. Because it was literally the last final sessions. There's been this dark. I was like, cool, this is great. He's going to be, but I only felt comfortable because it was going right into. If that happened like 2 sessions in, I'd be a bit more.
But see, that's what I feel like, because you can even the way you're talking about it is quite exciting to like have these things happen that are not the usual like A to B route that you would take in like hero stories and films and books and whatever. And it's usually why like I'm not really against putting my character in danger, because I still feel like it would make the entire campaign and the story more interesting if something if not everything always goes right. Something to me, and again, this could be a fault of mine, but to me, like when you have like obstacles in the way and like something happens, it always makes things more interesting. And if one of my characters has to die because of that, then so be it. Like I don't really mind that much, because it's still entertaining enough for me to see the story develop in that way. And if I can like be the character and like the reason that he dies or gets, I don't know, kidnapped or whatever is because of something that he did that would like make sense for him, then that's even better. Like I think it would be a little bit more shitty, if I can say that, sorry, if for example like out of nowhere one of our characters, like my character, gets kidnapped and killed just for no reason. I'm sure I would be so happy with that. But if it's if it's something that, if it's decisions that have led to that, then that's completely fine. Again, as long as it doesn't screw the rest of the team and the narrative, because then it's not okay.
Yeah, I mean, even then, like the narrative of you just being kidnapped and killed would be really boring, right? So
yeah.
There are bits in Blades in the Dark, you have entanglements that you have to deal with, so you can get picked up by the police. You can have to go to prison as well, and that wouldn't be like, oh, that's the end of your character, but bye. It'd be what's a cool thing that we can do with that? Like, how would let's explore your character's personality in that situation.
If anything, it would be your character's gone to prison so many times and their crimes are so bad after so long, right? They've murdered, one or maybe more people that's known of, and then by that point they're being sentenced to death, and then that'd bring its own role play and other avenues. How would you go about avoiding that? Do you go to the magistrate and use some beggar's political power, or do you go and manipulate someone else to help you out, or
you literally try to break into the prison.
Exactly, old school
Pirates of the Caribbean at the end of the Pirates of the Caribbean sort of style.
Exactly,
but
it's like
saves Jack Sparrow.
Come from it.
How do we say it's like Prison Break, and then the media reference was Pirates of the Caribbean, and not, I don't really know what happened there.
Yeah, Johnny Depp. Yeah.
That famous Prison Break medium we all love. Pirates of the Caribbean.
He's got nowhere to go but back to the deuce.
That scene in Mandalorian, if you've seen it, the prison episode.
Yes, good one. Yeah, and then
that's the whole thing. It's like 2 episodes for that.
Right.
I mean, that's a perfect Blades in the Dark, or shall I say, Scum and Villainy, the sci-fi version mission.
I was thinking I don't know, it'd be a house rule, right? But it would actually be helpful for me, and it's something anyone could do, I suppose. Going into a campaign, it'd be almost interesting if it was mandated, right? Choose your character and write out at least a paragraph of a backup character. So you'd kind of get a chance. You would obviously roll your main character, but like for me, I would feel quite nice. Like for example, I'm thinking of Saffron. He's a really old character. If I tinkered away, like, oh, he's like his grandson's out there, or his son's out there.
Oh yeah.
It would just would be nice knowing always in the background, actually you've got this quite cool idea already ready. You're really kind of connected as well, and it would definitely make me feel less.
So, sorry.
No, yeah.
I've done that before, where I've had one character I'm playing, and then I've made another character who I really like and actually prefer, and I want to play that character more. And then I'm going to play more dangerously with my first character, and almost want to get them killed so I can play the other.
Yeah.
So that's just me.
That's because that would be okay as long as you're not being ridiculous, which I don't think.
Yeah.
You're walking down a hallway. There's a big fire pit over there, but I jump in the fire. I think that's funny. Encourage me if I did. Because it's always nice to know as a backup. I'm like, oh, actually, if this does go wrong, actually, I do quite like. Yeah.
But there's nothing stopping you from doing that, or even like building your second character once where your first character is gone. Building your second character based on the first character. There's really nothing stopping you.
While you're learning the system on your current character and learning about the world, you can use that knowledge you're gaining to help build your second character.
Like if you feel like that helps you, like why not do it? Like it doesn't really.
More homework for the group then.
I think your audio cut out for a bit, Mikey. You didn't hear that.
Oh, I think it would. In my head, it reads like literally a paragraph. He is the grandson. He's pissed off at his granddad, and he wants to do this, that, and it would be just sitting there to the side, and it'd be quite. I might even do it. Although
I'd say go for it.
But maybe thinking again, when we get back to more traditional role plays, where again you're the hero, it'd be quite nice to go in knowing you've already got quite a nice idea in there.
I genuinely think that you should definitely do that. If you feel like it would actually help you, merge with your character better, then go for it by all means. Even if it does mean that you'll prefer the second character eventually, then just give your first character a good send off. You can talk to Olly about it, or you'll find a way to make it work. I mean, after all, the story will also continue, hopefully, and you can have your fill.
That's it.
Exactly. I think another interesting thing about this is, I think if you're playing if the party is very playing to protect and not looking for that trouble themselves, therefore it is the GM's job to try and put you in these troublesome situations. And I think that creates a lot of these situations where it can feel unfair, because it's like, I don't know if the whole fast bridge thing is a good example of this, but these situations where it's like, look, this is going to stretch kind of your suspension of disbelief a little bit, but you're in this situation that is a little bit railroady, but now the shit's hit the fan, and this really dramatic thing has happened, and then everyone's like, oh, why did that happen? Or why didn't I get a chance to stop that? But I think if everyone was looking for trouble, then there's so much trouble already that the GM doesn't have to come up with it. They're like, oh well, you need to deal with this trouble that you've discovered.
Yeah, but there's ways of doing that. Like for example, the whole bridge situation, that was completely out of our hands, and it came out of nowhere. Like for example, going back to the example that I used earlier. Like for example, if one of us got kidnapped and killed, without really having anything, any decisions that we could have taken to avoid that. But then, for example, if the story needs to be shaken up, you could just throw tens and tens and tens of enemies, and then the party has to decide, listen, you might have to retreat, and maybe one has to hold ground, or it's more of an interactive thing. Odds are still against you, but it's not automatic, you lose because the game.
Yeah, I know, and it's also like throwing up quests and things, and you can do this and you can do this, but then it still lets the players play their very protective, defensive. I'm going to conserve all my resources. I'm going to conserve all my HP. I'm going to find exploits in the grid to make sure I can win the most. But Michael, optimal hurricane plays.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough. Right? There's so many different things tangled up because you are playing a game, so your natural instinct is want to win, want to do well, and I think, like you said, I think it's just maybe setting up a few more bumpers on the backside that will encourage you to not worry so much. Because if the option in your brain is like, well, I've got to either play really well or just die, sometimes it can feel like, or maybe to me it does, when it shouldn't at all, really. So it's maybe just doing whatever it takes, even if it's just a conversation at the start of the campaign, to kind of lay down some ground rules, which we've done so well with Blades, to really set it apart and just say like, just to take that edge off, and then it's all fun. Because I do when I role play, I want it to be fun and a bit chaotic in a constructive way. So but Blade seems like a perfect avenue for that, because the combat is not so numbers based like stuff in Wang, where it's like, right, so I'm rolling my 12 d6 and they're all sixes. Oh, and roll the dice and you can just see these numbers stacking up, and it's terrifying. Whereas this, even one session, and it's just very kind of like, stuff kind of happens. Do you want to move around it, and how do you want to react to it? Will definitely help just the fact it's not so just purely like number based. We'll take away the binariness of it. We can kind of feel like we've got a lot more agency to do what we need to do, which would be cool.
Yes.
More dynamic.
It is definitely.
Feels that way.
I mean, I don't think that any of us planned for like the practice session to go the way it did. Chaos erupted, like 3 people on a boat running away. I was stuck with my cultists. Like, a lot of things happened, and they weren't really planned out. But it was very entertaining, and it still worked out in the end, or at least we think it did, because we didn't finish the practice session. But
it meant you can do things that are silly, like in that are what should be looking for danger, right? Which is fun. Is like, I'm talking about, like, injecting Daryl's people with drugs, and it gives, that probably gives you more fun, Ollie, right? Because you can always done that. Okay, well, actually, maybe, and especially in a system where it's all about like the challenge situation, you could easily say, well, actually, mate, because you did that, you're now that guy so drugged up, he smashed into bed, and you're like, oh yeah, shit, I was kind of just messing around and having fun, and that had consequences, and then it makes this more tough, and it rolls into the next phase, and that's pretty exciting.
One of his cultists has his like 6-year sober token, and
ruined in a second because of a stupid mission.
Yeah,
goddamn old man.
Yeah, and the cool thing about the consequences is, I can bring that trouble, but I think the idea is it's a lot more collaborative. So if one of you is like, oh, I have an idea for a way that this can go wrong, or I can have an idea how this is going to get more complex, like Daryl's character's demon mistress paying him a visit in the middle of a heist, at the least opportune moment, that makes it more tense. So I can go over some steps to do looking for trouble in a good way. And it's like what we said before, which was, you simply state the goal. If you want to do something that you feel is a bit reckless, a bit unoptimized, a bit kind of something that everyone's going to be like, don't do it. And then we just work to establish the boundaries around that. So we say, no, this isn't going to result in your death, someone else's death. Like, it's not going to be that bad. Here's what's the worst kind of situation that could happen. And then make sure everyone's okay with that. And that's really what it is. But I think people don't do that very often. I don't think they discuss like, oh, well, I'm thinking I'm going to do this, or I really want to do this, but
would you suggest doing that in the middle of game, or just after, or in between sessions? Is that more your thinking?
I think in the middle of the game. I think if you're in a situation and someone says, I feel like my character would do this, I think it's going to be really fun if my character does this, but obviously it's going to put everyone else in a bit of a worse situation. I think in the book that I read that talks about this, the example it gave was somebody being the lookout during a heist in a bar, has a few drinks, and the player's like, I feel like this can be a chance for them to screw up a bit because they're a bit of a braggart, and they start drunkenly bragging, to the barmaid or something, and then pick a fight with the bouncers. And it's kind of like, it kind of did what the plan, but it put them in a worse position. So they paid the price because the GM was like, I don't want it to fuck up the rest of the plan that the players are doing, but it should give you should get punched in the face, or you should suffer the consequences. So kind of ring-fencing it, kind of.
And I know because you wanted to say something, Lawrie, but I just put this part in and give you the mic. But I agree with you, because personally I don't think that when you act recklessly with a character, or taking certain bad decisions. What you don't want, for the most part, unless it's predetermined or like discussed with the team, is that your reckless action would negatively affect like different characters in a way that I would either die, or like get like something really bad happen to them. Like then I think you would have failed, in being a team player, because acting recklessly and putting yourself in danger is one thing, but ruining it for others, I think, is more of a big no-no.
Yeah, unless they're happy to also suffer the consequences because it's a fun moment. But
yeah, and that's why it's good discussion. I guess the question should be like, because that example is interesting, because it's like, well, why would you bother doing that other than, I'm just bored and I want to make my character something fun? I think it's as long as you can always, it's almost like a litmus test. Like, is this fun for everyone? Like, or is this at least, it's not, it has to not feel forced, right? So it has to be like almost inevitable. Like okay, right, another really good example is in Wang as well. My character is pretty prolific for just killing people in cold blood. And
Xenos
yeah, but
and
no,
heretics.
Those people.
he killed other ministerials. Like they were being heretical, but he killed a lot of humans. Like
Yeah.
he killed a couple, and it was in those moments there was some pushback. Or when all fighting the Xenos on the bridge, yeah, that was really driven. I could feel it inside me, like, well, I have to do that. Like I'm not. It was good because I wouldn't have been so convinced if I was like, oh, this will be a laugh. It was like, I can't not do this. Like it just wouldn't make sense. And it was great because it did result in a lot of angsty situations, and it did drive wedges in the party actually. And actually, we weren't it made sense for the setting. 4K, it's horrible. We were not a harmonious party really, and that was fine because it was made all the dramas quite strong, and it made for some really good settings. So I think as long as that's a weird moment because I wouldn't have even talked it through because there was no point. I literally couldn't. If I didn't do that, as like, why am I even playing this game? Because that is what this character did, especially as it went on. But similarly, I guess it would be more like in those moments you're like, that could be fun. It might be a good idea to stop and say, I want to do this, and the litmus test should be not because I want to have a laugh, because I think it'll really increase the dynamic level for everyone. It'll do something really, really fun. So I think it's good to encourage that. And again, I think knowing that now, I'll think about it.
And it was the basis of the whole next mission as well, because you had to make it up to the to the Eldari. You got a visit from the Harlequins.
It kicked everything off, and that was so. It did. I think there were people in the party who weren't happy about it, but it led to some fun. A lot. So that's good. And that was the free play moment as well. That was not necessarily safe. So it's a good thing to do, and it relies on the GM to be adaptive and relies on the party to kind of trust each other a little bit as well. I
think as well, like asking for permission in this instance is better than asking for forgiveness, because I feel like most of the party would, if you said I really think this is what my character would do, and nobody who knows about 40k could disagree actually, but if you go ahead and do it, everyone will be like, oh, what do that for? Like you're just being a murder hobo or something. But I think it's easier to give permission.
So I just wanted to pick up on a point there. Is like, how much discussion is like too much discussion? Because I know in our parties, generally some people kind of jump on the point like, we're talking too much and it's too much meta. You should just do as your character would do or say as they would say. So how much? This is what I always struggle with, because I have that in the back of my mind. I don't want to kind of talk too much, but I find talking through stuff actually helps me think through stuff with the party as well. And I don't mind that layer to it, because I can separate the party discussing it out of character, and then separate that knowledge from what my character knows and what they're thinking.
I think
so. I don't mind it too much.
I feel like the meta thing is a bit overblown, right? Because it's supposed to be players talking in ways that their characters weren't able to, I guess, and sharing vital information that they wouldn't do normally. But I feel like we're all telling a story together. Like we should be able to discuss like important moments and what's fun for everybody.
I guess it comes out of frequency, right? As long as it's not every 5 minutes stopping. It's only really in those kind of more crucial, interesting moments. As long as you're not the one always doing it. I'll definitely think about like, because I think there were times in the last campaign we talked about, there was a lot of railroading in there, and I think we all had the moment where we're like, oh, I could do this, and we all be like, oh, but actually it's all clearly going this way. Where
Yeah.
we had the approach to, we probably could have updated a lot if we had just stopped and said, look, guys, I should do this, and we could talk about it. So and that's a good example we can use to remind ourselves that actually a lot can come from just stopping, and as long as it's not every encounter, every character we meet, I think it's okay.
I think we'll probably be able to explore that a lot more with this system because it gives you a lot more. It's a lot more open to that kind of thing. There's way less linear, as you said.
And all of the XP is tied to taking desperate actions. So you're pushing yourself to be in these really desperate, troublesome situations, and it gives you XP for acting out your vice and your issues. So there's going to be a lot of situations where someone's going to want to act out like bad consequences for their addictions or whatever, and everyone's going to be like, oh no, but you're going to mess up the heist. But we can come up with ways where it's not going to do that or work around it.
You're not going to let it ruin everything, but the consequences means that it's also not a free thing. Oh well, of course I'll just drug myself up in a corner and pass out, and it doesn't matter.
I mean,
the heist won't fail, but maybe next heist you start off with no trousers. I don't know, whatever it is.
Well, the thing there is it's not binary either. The outcome's never binary, so it's more like a scalar, right? Like the consequence won't be bad or good. It's going to be maybe a bit bad, very bad, a little bit good, or a bit of both.
Yeah.
And that's not always going to affect the outcome of the heist severely or not, right?
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
it's on you and your actions and everyone's actions around you to like influence that.
Yeah, and you're failing forward all the time because you're succeeding, but with consequence. Yeah. So these bad things are happening, but you are doing the thing that you want to do. So yes.
There's that example. So a whole session could be just dealing with the consequences from the last session. So it's like, yes, we won. Yeah, you won, but we just won something you could have completely avoided if you hadn't been messing around. But that was probably a really fun session where we were, like you say, trying to get someone out of jail before they're literally hanged or something like that. Like it's memorable moments that are going to be part of the story.
Oh yeah, I mean,
but that's why. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say it's from listening to people play it, it's literally a case of kind of, I don't know, doing sort of focusing on what you need to do right now, kind of screw everything else, or we'll deal with it later, and then the next score is, oh, this guy wants to hate us now, so we should probably kill him before he kills us.
But that kind of ties into what I was talking about earlier about like taking certain decisions and like taking certain actions that aren't really optimal when it comes to like the grand scheme of things, like because ideally in the hero's journey you want to always progress forward, but as you said, like you can fail forward, so bad things could lead to good things. It's just you have to deal with the consequences, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that just makes things more interesting. It happens in books and games and in film, so why shouldn't it happen in a campaign between us? I genuinely believe that, and again, I could be wrong. Like all three of you could just tell me right now, like you're wrong. But
you're wrong. I'm joking.
I do honestly feel like it's fine. I do feel like it makes things more interesting, and if there's a price to pay for that, then so be it.
Yeah, and when we saw last campaign, our Soulbound campaign, where it was very railroaded, the opposite of it. So again, it's quite a nice flip and a quite benchmark to be like, cool, well, that's what happens if you play it safe and you just stick to the guns and don't do it. Is that we do come away all unsatisfied. I think we all had a good time playing together, but we wish the campaign had been more open. Here we are with a kind of blank canvas in front of us almost, and I think we're going to enjoy that quite a lot.
I think the hardest thing for me, at least, and probably you guys as well, is going to be kind of adjusting your mindset of how to play and like not playing to protect your character and actually not being risk averse, because that's just naturally, I think, how you play as a character in most systems, right?
Yeah, well, you're trying to, like I said, as your point from right from the start, Lawrie, is that it's like it does feel antithetical to be like, oh, I'm the hero trying to save the world, so of course I can't be put myself in danger. Whereas here, the danger is the story. It's such a wonderful concept. Like the whole next mission could be about the fact that one of our characters almost died or did die or is in mortal danger. It can just there's nothing written down. It's and all we're doing here, like we say, is telling a story together and like creating characters. So it's only beneficial that random things happen that aren't prescribed to us, because we'll always feel more connected to that.
Amen.
And I think that's where the game excels, actually, because as Ollie mentioned, like the most probable outcome that you have, if it's a success, is that you would success, but with a little bit of failure put into that, because something goes wrong either way, even though you managed to do what you wanted to do. And I think that will actually help us as a group to like sort of like get to a point where we're pushing things forward, but also readying ourselves to deal with consequences that could happen due to our actions. And I think the game so far seems to do that really well. Obviously, we'll know much better once we actually like properly get into it. But it's kind of why like I'm very excited to really start playing the game, because it does feel like it is meant, it is designed to like give you this like blank canvas, as you said. It will like give you the points of what the good decisions are. Like you want to grow as a group. You want to like get this boat. In our case, for example, then however you go about it is up to you. Rather than like being put at the starting location, then you have to traverse forward. You have to kill 2 enemies and then like get into the store, but the door's locked. Okay, then you find the key. Like it's more of a that's what you have to do. Good luck. And that's how we got to the like in my opinion, like genius idea of like the spice thing and then the boat. It kind of like helps you be creative and helps imagination flow, and I love that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think actually, will the risk averse thing actually help us? Because having 5 players on a heist, I feel like the temptation maybe just frontal assault every day of the week, because we can just literally overpower whatever the defenses are, probably. But I feel like you guys, at least at the beginning, will want to try and find the clever way, the sneaky way. And then yeah, things will degrade, fall apart from
I
there.
mean, we're scoundrels, not soldiers, so I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel strongly inclined to act like a scoundrel, not a soldier in this regard. I want to be stealthy. I want to have that skullduggery, that finesse with it. I want to, be able to complete the heist, and then, show some dexterity at the end, or
What was that?
brag about it in the pub after, kind of thing. And, or hear the people on the street talking. Oh, you hear about that heist? Oh, these guys are so badass. Oh, and just be smiling to myself, being like, yeah, it's me.
Yeah, it was like that Reddit thread about playing spiders in Blades, and the person was like, "You're the Danny Ocean character who turns up kind of halfway through the heist, and you've done everything you need to do, and no one knows what it is yet, but you can just be like, sat there in the middle, like just having a nice time, and yeah,
pulling all the strings."
When you sent me that clip of the Sherlock Holmes, the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movie, when he's kind of like he goes to confront the baddie at the end, and the baddie thinks he's got the upper hand, and he's gotten beat, and then he's like, on the contrary.
Yeah.
I think you'll find when I walked into your office about 5 moments ago and replaced your gun cartridges with plastic rounds.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
But similarly, we want it to then be him say, actually, I knew that, and I sort it back again, and then it devolves into chaos. Yeah, actually, like that's also going to feel right in character as well. So what's nice,
the reverse card.
Both spectrums will seem appropriate. Whereas again, if we're heroes of the light and Lord our Savior, if we're all scrambling around on the floor like ducking for cover and like panicking, it doesn't fit narratively. Whereas this, we succeed perfectly, that's great because we're professionals. If we don't, that's great because we're all these just flawed idiots. So it's it's both. It all seems viable and makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're safe. Well, we're safe. The story is safe from like a full frontal assault from the 5 of us, because at least 2 of us are useless in combat. Be it my character and Mikey's. Like Mikey's an old man. Mine's just weak. I mean, if he gets into a fist fight, he'll end up in the ITU. So there's no way I'm gonna fight.
Yeah.
So I mean, and we have a spider as well, who's not really one to get their hands dirty. So yeah, I don't think that like fists are gonna be the answer to
Alex's character is a gentleman burglar.
Yeah,
although he always goes into a combat.
I don't think that's gonna
Rambo by the end, anyways.
End up with us fighting.
But then you never know. our characters might be driven to do certain things you wouldn't think they'd do.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
They might all
But-
become really violent during the course of this campaign. Who knows?
What are you planning exactly?
Well, a vendetta's on the cards at least.
Yeah. Cheeky vendetta.
Mm-hmm. Hey,
I
that
am
we
really
shall
looking
be.
forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I think we've fairly covered looking for trouble.
I think so. Summation,
Lovely stuff.
do it.
Yes.
That's what that's
Do it. Try
Definitely.
it. Give it a go.
Do it responsibly, like pretty much everything else in life.
mostly.
Just do it. Just do it responsibly, and that's it.
I'll just reflect back on, like I say, because it's been quite nice to reflect the times where I have done it and actually what has resulted in positively, and the times where it's not been actually could have been fun to just keep that in mind and bring that to mind and use that as inspiration to
Yes.
do it.
Yes. And I think we four can agree to support each other in these looking for trouble moments. And we have the bigger numbers in the vote. So
As long as they never watch this video, they'll never know.
Just cut it out. That's fine.
yeah, it's fine.
Cut it in post.
Well then, thank you very much, players, for joining me on this players tips video. I have a couple other actually articles for player tips. Maybe we come on again and do the rest,
Definitely.
rather than me as someone who's only been a player once talking about player tips. Always good to get them.
It'll change eventually.
The experts.
Exactly. And everyone has. I feel like everyone has a different playing style as well.
Definitely.
It's good
The
to have
wild
different.
No. I need to lose that moniker.
Oh, it's a wild card. The agent of chaos. No,
Oh.
you surprised me, Lawrie, because you play so many supporty characters.
Yeah.
You don't play supporty characters in games,
Well,
do you?
no, not really.
Interesting.
I think I like to. Well, typically, to divulge, I don't really enjoy the combat in RPGs, so I prefer the narrative stuff. So I kind of build them more with charisma in mind or intelligence, something that I can use more narratively, and then I can kind of still be useful in combat just by building a bit of support. You know, it's kind of my go-to. I feel like if you go heavily into combat, you're kind of missing out on the narrative sometimes.
Where were you when we were playing Wang? We definitely needed someone else like that.
Yes.
Well, we didn't have many.
You just need more flamethrowers by the sound of it.
We had enough of that. Trust
Heavy
me.
flamethrower.
What can't be cured by cleansing flame? Come on.
You talk about
No, I say this every session. Do not encourage this.
Cleansing flame and hurricane.
Yes.
It rhymes. It can't be wrong.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, I will chat to you next week for hopefully our first proper session of Blades, this game that we spent this whole time plugging, even though it's not supposed to be about Blades. But
what if it's rubbish? We start playing it, it's just awful. There we go. It's going to be.
Imagine.
yeah. Oh well, back to D&D.
Come on, give me the numbers.
No.
Don't do this to me.
It'll be great.
I don't want to see a D20 ever again.
There are no D20s in Blades, right?
No.
No. Okay, you're safe.
Thank God. It's very exciting though. Oh,
yes.
It is.
All right, chaps. Till next week.
Take it
yeah.
easy.
Take it easy.
Everyone.